what we're doing this whole year, Nathan and I met several months ago, and we said, what should we talk about this first year of this church's existence? And I asked Nathan that, and after a long pause, he said, I think we should pretty much say what Jesus said when he started his ministry. Duh. Yeah, of course. So we're talking about his most famous sermon. We're going to deal with the Sermon on the Mount through this whole year, except for special holidays, and we'll probably even try to figure out a way to pull it in on those times too. So that's where we're concentrating. And here we are already on the 4th week of that, and we're finding out that what Jesus did in this sermon, no introduction, no funny story, no thanks for coming. This is people on the side of this slope and they're on a seashore, and he's down there and he's talking kind of a natural amphitheater deal. He starts throwing out these bizarre statements to try to reorient the people's perspective so that they see a little bit more clearly what life is all about. And his teaching was radical and it was authoritative. And nobody had ever listened to a teacher like this before. So people were coming by the droves. And I found out a little bit more just this week about this word that starts off these bizarre statements in the beginning of Jesus' sermon. This, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek today, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. This word blessed is a word that the ancient Greeks at the time of Jesus used to describe the gods or the elite of the society. So in our culture, we classify with lower class, middle class, upper class. This blessed word, this would be comparable to the upper class. So in effect, the people who were there because of wealth, because of position, because of the family they were born in, whatever, they would live above most of the common concerns that people in the middle class and the lower class had to deal with. So in other words, Jesus' opening statements on this Sermon of the Mount, Sermon on the Mount, were kind of like this. Look at the screen. Those in the real upper class are those who accurately see their spiritual poverty, their spiritual condition. The real upper class know how to grieve and sorrow in this life. The real upper class have put someone else in charge of running their life. They bow down. The real upper class in the kingdom of God are famished and parched for what is right and good. So here, these statements by Jesus were so crazy. In fact, being desperate and sorrowful and controlled and starving and parched, those aren't words that you would normally use to describe the upper class. No. It's amazing how our perspective can change, and our perception changes so much when perspective is revealed. Molly told me just a couple of days ago that when the kids were out of school on Friday, their teachers all had to work. And so they're all meeting. And this is a terrible year for our teachers, because they're being handed down all this new curriculum stuff that they've got to go through. And so you know how hard it was. Teachers, their first couple of years of teaching, I mean, you're learning the ropes, you're getting all new, you're figuring out what you're going to teach when and how you're going to cover all this stuff. Well, they're in effect having to do that all over again this year. They've got all this new mandate, all this, and it's just full of hooey. But they have to go through all this stuff. And so the teachers were meeting on Friday to go through and there was a lot of complaining, and people were kind of in the doldrum about it, and the attitude wasn't that good. Well, Molly, if y'all don't know, she's expecting. Just found out a little bit ago. Well, she had an appointment on Friday morning right before lunch. She said, I got a doctor's appointment. So she took off. The meeting was kind of a downer. She went to her appointment, came back after lunch, and the meeting continued on with all the teachers, and they're still kind of in the dumps. And Molly was wanting to lighten things up a little bit, and she said, well, hey, on another note, I just got back from the doctor, and the ultrasound showed a healthy baby with a strong heartbeat, and it looks like the baby's about the size of a raspberry. Well, the group of teachers that were sitting around, there were several that didn't know yet that she was expecting. Do you know what that little perspective did to that meeting? Oh, what was a doldrum and a downer and complaints immediately turned into this eruption of spontaneous joy. And here came the pregnancy stories, one after another, and they all had advice for her. This is what you need to do now. This is what you need. The rest of the afternoon was completely different because of perspective. It just changes. I know that when Jesus spoke these words so long ago, it struck a chord with these poor peasants. They were just kind of traveling around, they heard some exciting guy talking about these new things. And it was just so wild. Jesus stands up and says, "Let me tell you about the real upper class in my Father's kingdom. They are famished and parched for righteousness." Okay. Righteousness. Now, there's another one of those church words we don't use too much. I mean, back in the 80s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles said, "Oh, that's righteous, dude." And that's about how much we say righteous. We don't do it anymore. Nobody really puts that in the common vernacular. Today, Jesus would have said something like, the real upper class are those really hungry and thirsty for goodness, for uprightness, for being and doing right, for justice, for something that's set apart from the normal, something that's kind of sacred, kind of holy, for wanting what's right to win out every time. And the Razorbacks are right. It's just not winning out every time. Can't figure that one out. I love what the easy-to-read version says on this verse. Look at the screen. Great blessings belong to those who want to do right more than anything else. Now, this is a good place for us to camp. Don't think about this. In fact, in the program where I normally have a little outline, I just put notes this time. I just thought, I'm hopeful that some seeds will just be thrown out, and there might be a sentence or a thought, or you'll take off on a tangent. Just go. Just let the Holy Spirit lead you. Now, if you have to sleep, sleep. But whatever you need to do, if you want to write a little note down, you just write that down in that area. I want us to camp right here for a second. That verse wants to do right more than anything else. What do you want more than anything else? What is it that you just can't live without? I can't go on without this. That's a good question. I think there are different levels of hunger. One is, you've already eaten a meal, and it has been an hour, but hey, I could use something. A little snack. That's one level of hunger. Another level of hunger is, it's been 3 or 4 hours, and your stomach, it's growling. There's no, I need to eat. I need to find something. Then there's another level of hunger that probably none of us in this room have ever felt before. But it's the hunger that says, if I don't get something, I'm in trouble. I gotta get something in my system. I'm about to pass out. It's a deeper level. I think there are different levels of spiritual hunger, varying desires spiritually. I think one level is, I think I might give this Jesus thing a shot. Let's see what happens. I think another level is, best I can tell, Jesus is the real deal. He's in it. I think I'm going to commit. That's another level, a little more intense. And then there's another level that is this all-consuming desire that takes over. And everything and everyone else on earth pales in comparison to knowing Jesus and living for Him. And it's usually at this point in the teaching right here that we preachers, for some reason, I think it's our American background of, okay, just grit it and here we go. This is where we preachers usually, I think we take a wrong turn. We take this word from Jesus and we talk about, man, you need to have a hunger, and we turn it into a spiritual spanking. And we shame everybody for not having enough hunger for God. And so everybody gets their whooping and they leave and say, yeah, he reminded me that I just don't hunger for God enough. Let's think about this for a second. Let's put it in context. Jesus is just talking to these people that day. And He gets up and He tells them, hey, those of you who know that spiritually you're in trouble, you got nothing going on spiritually. you're hurt, and you're a real mess, I want you to know that those of you who know you're a real mess spiritually, my Father's kingdom, it belongs to you. Boom, he lets that drop. And then he says, and those of you who are hurting, you're mourning, and you're grieving right now, maybe over some painful thing that's happened to you in life, or you're aware of how spiritually you got nothing. Those of you who really feel that and are hurt with that, I want you to know something. Comfort, it's right around the corner. It's coming. And then he looks up and he says, those of you who are meek, but Jesus used a word that made a lot of sense. Meek? What's meek? That's what we talked about last week. So Jesus looks and he says, those of you who have given up control, you just say, no, I'm not in charge anymore calling the shots. Somebody else is going to be telling me and directing me from this point on. Those of you who have done that, I want you to know something. Your life is about to be flooded with earth's greatest treasure. A treasure that will never be destroyed by anything physical. A treasure that will be found in the deepness of relationships. Your human connections. You're going to inherit human connections. The greatest treasure on earth. Because you let somebody else take over. So you see kind of where Jesus is going here? It isn't a whooping. He's giving you something. It's filled with life. So why is it we preachers, we teachers, once we come to the hunger and thirst business, why is it that we get all of this good, you're fortunate, if you heard, you're fortunate, you're in this, you're fortunate, you get control. Then does Jesus really start berating them for their level of spiritual hunger? Oh, and by the way, what's up with this? No, this doesn't fit the context. I don't think this was Jesus' message. We were born hungry. We were born thirsty. You came out of the womb that way. And ever since the fall in the Garden of Eden, when we lost our most prized possession, which was our walk with God, ever since that moment, we've been hungering and thirsting for that walk. The problem is, we've forgotten that. Somebody hadn't taught us, or we haven't had our perspective opened up to know that's what I'm hungry and thirsty for. And then sin, because sin is involved in this whole process, sin messes everything up. It obscures our senses. And sin makes us think that we're hungry and thirsty for something else, and sin makes us search in all the wrong places to try to get satisfied. We're trying to fill up, to try to fill this inner, deep hunger that's much more than any kind of hunger that's just physical on the outside. You know, you've heard the old saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's true, but you can put salt in his oats. I think Jesus is putting some salt, gently, he's putting some salt in what we're eating. I think what he's doing, you know what usually happens when we get hungry or we get thirsty? Our first thing that we generally do is what? We go to try to relieve it with something that's going to make us feel good physically. That inner hunger, we search for some physical outlet. And so that's why people eat too much. And that's why people turn to pornography. And that's why drug abuse and getting drunk is so appealing, because I can satisfy it for a little bit with that. And that's why popularity and fame become such a dream. Every time I see American Idol, hey, why do you think you should be the next American Idol? Because this is why I live. This is my function in life. I want to say, that isn't your reason for living. That isn't the whole purpose. It's got to be something deeper than that. We're trying to do something about the hunger and the thirst. And we're all hungry and we're all thirsty. And Jesus sees that. And he sees it in the people he's talking to that day. So he says, I can see that you're parched. You're famished. And I want you to know that I have found what will completely satisfy and fill you up. And the people are just staring at him, and Jesus in effect says, it's me. Can you imagine Jesus doing this? I'm kind of a big deal. What you're craving is me. I think Jesus is constantly putting salt in our O's. I think He's orchestrating and allowing circumstances in our lives that will make us feel the pains of hunger. And I think He actually uses this life on earth to increase our hunger and our thirst so that we'll look to Him to be filled. Now, I know what I'm about to say may seem a little insensitive, but I think it's worth the risk. So hear me out. Have you got some things in your life that are miserable? I mean, these things that you really detest this. Whatever. Have you got some areas of discontentment? It's just not turning out the way you wanted in this area of your life. Maybe in a lot of areas in your life. What about jealousy? Is there someone in your life that you see where they are, what they do, what they have, who they're with? Is there something inside of you, that little green monster, that kind of shows itself? I mean, do you struggle with jealousy? What about do you have bouts of unhappiness where you're just kind of moody, you're just kind of in a funk? And I have a word for you. If any of those describe you at times, I have a word for you. Congratulations. I know that seems a little trite. I say congratulations because God is responsible for allowing these circumstances to unfold the way they have unfolded. And you're being filled and you're being satisfied. Oh, it's a moment away. It's a moment. Are you dissatisfied with life? Are you one of those people that you're just kind of always on the edge of tears? They're right there, and it doesn't take much, and then boom, it floodgates open. What about anger? Are you kind of like that bubbling volcano? And it just doesn't take much, but boom, you erupt. You're out. I got a word for you. Congratulations. Now you can find out what God has been wanting to show you all along. You know what He's wanting to show you? You need Him. Y'all do. It's that salt that's making us thirsty. It's that pain that's making us hungry. And we gotta have Him. That's the only thing that'll fill it. Satisfaction is not found in some great performance, and it's not found in some terrific pleasure, and it's not found in wonderful possessions, and it isn't found in great people, and I'm telling you, it isn't found in a place. It's found in God. In this walk, going through life with Him. That's where it's found. Trying to fill that void with anything else or with anyone else is to just create more hunger and more thirst. In fact, sometimes I hesitate to say a lot about the differences between Christianity and other religions because it's so easy for people who might have another belief system to be offended. And I don't think that's the message. We're not trying to just dog somebody for their beliefs. We're just trying to point out some differences. And one of the differences between Christianity and all of the other religions is that at the heart of every religion, there is a major figure. With Buddhism, it's Buddha. And with Islam, it's Muhammad. With Hinduism, it's Krishna. And with Christianity, it's Jesus. So that's where the comparison abruptly ends. Because a Muslim, if you go to any of these adherents to these different faiths, and you ask them, how do you find salvation? They'll point to you a way of living. A Muslim won't point to you a person. He won't point to you Muhammad. He'll point to you the Quran. And it's not that Buddha delivers you. No Buddhist will claim that Buddha delivers you. No, what they'll say, it's Buddha's noble truths. That's where you need to go to find that more meaningful life. And by contrast, Jesus is the only religious figure that taught the way to truth was through Him. In fact, He just boldly said it. He said, I'm it. I'm truth. He didn't just point to a way of salvation. He said, I am that way. And that's why for a Christian, it isn't a way of living. And it's easy to get off track there. We think, are you a Christian? No, I do this. No. It has nothing to do with how we live or what we do. My Christianity is because somebody took my place. I stand right now because somebody stood in my stead, so I would never be separated. It's a different message than every other religion in the world. Look at Psalm 37:4. Seek your happiness in the Lord. We don't look for happiness. We look for Him. If we look for happiness, guess what we'll miss? We'll miss Jesus. If we look for Jesus, guess what we'll find you? You won't even need to look for happiness. Happiness will find you. You find Jesus, happiness will find you. Happiness is a consequence of seeking God. So if I make happiness my goal, I miss it. But if I make finding God my goal, I am guaranteed to find happiness. A famous Christian from centuries ago, St. Augustine, actually said this: our hearts are restless until they find they rest in you, O Lord. I can remember in high school, they had this circus thing that came to our town where we grew up. And for some reason, there was a community event that was at the high school, and all of these caged animals, I don't know how they did this, but they were in these cages with wheels on them, but they brought them into our high school gymnasium. And there's tons of different animals. Well, they weren't in the bar cages where they could reach through. They were in the mesh cages. There was no way these huge cats could do anything. Well, our gym teacher said, listen, we were on one side of the gym, and he said, I need you guys to run over to the other side. Well, they had the big cats lined up in cages about 5 feet from the back wall. Well, all we had to do was run just the width of a basketball court just against that wall to get to the other side. Well, there was one kid in front of us that was kind of leading the pack, and because of all the commotion and all the activity and people running everywhere, the cats, they were agitated, they were mad, they were growling, they were showing their teeth, and they were scratching the cages with their huge claws. We had 5 feet. There was no way that cat was going to get to us. But seeing that cage shake a little bit and being right that close, y'all, we were, if a man-eating lion was let loose, he would starve. There was not a man in that gym. We could not go down that corridor. We ended up going down the stairs, through the locker room, and up the stairs on the other side to get to the other side of our gymnasium. We couldn't do it. I couldn't either, man. I wanted to be the brave guy, and I took a couple of steps, and one was just, wow, I just made that huge thing. I said, no way, I'm not doing it. I went back down. I couldn't do it. And it reminded me of one of C.S. Lewis' books called The Silver Chair. You know, we've seen Blind Witch in the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian and Voyage of Dawn Treader. Y'all, wait till you see The Silver Chair. You're going to love this one. There's this scene. You know, the lion represents the Jesus figure, and Jill, one of the girls, that's us. She's us. I got to read you this scene. I wish so much I wish they'd done the movie. We'd be showing that clip right now, just like last week we showed that clip. So you're going to have to let your imagination take you somewhere. This is the conversation between the two. Here we go. When Jill stopped, she found she was dreadfully thirsty. She listened carefully and felt almost sure she heard the sound of running water. Jill looked around her very carefully. There was no sign of the lion. So she plucked up her courage to look for running water. She came to an open glade and saw the stream, bright as glass. Although the sight of the water made her feel 10 times thirstier than before, she didn't rush forward to drink. She stood still as if she had been turned to stone, with her mouth wide open. she had a very good reason. Just this side of the stream lay the lion. "Are you thirsty?" said the lion. "I'm dying of thirst," said Jill. "Then drink." Would you mind going away while I do?" The lion answered this only by a look and a very low growl. And as Jill gazed at its motionless bulk, she realized that she might as well have asked the whole mountain to move aside for her convenience. The delicious, rippling noise of the stream was driving her nearly frantic. Will you promise not to do anything to me if I do come?" said Jill. "I make no promise," said the lion. Jill was so thirsty now that without noticing it, she had taken a step nearer. Do you eat girls?" "I have swallowed up boys and girls, women and men, kings and emperors, cities and realms," said the lion. "I dare not come and drink." "Then you'll die of thirst." "Oh dear," said Jill, coming another step nearer. "I suppose I must go and look for another stream then." And the lion said, "There is no other stream." He's it. He is our only hope. There's no other way. One thing wonderfully clear about the Master is although he may leave you in confusion for a time, for a season, although we won't know all the answers until we see him face to face, he does take our major confusions and our major doubts, and he does answer them. You guys should trust that. He promised you if you seek him, you'll find him. He promised that. And he doesn't squelch on his promises. You get to believe. You get to start experiencing again what we lost. You can actually walk with God. It's living water that we desire to flood our hearts. That's what we want. All right, let's pray.